Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. We are approaching potentially the best time of year to read, summer. There is just something about a summery book, a summer romance specifically, although I do have every genre in this video, that just hits different, and I just love summery reads. So today I want to give you guys some of my summer book recommendations. Not all of these necessarily take place during summer. A lot of them do, but some of them just have summer vibes, or I think they would be good reads to read during the summer. Starting off with thrillers, we have The Villa. This follows two childhood best friends who are both writers, and they decide to go spend the summer writing in this Italian villa. And it turns out that the villa is where a really infamous murder happened in the 70s, where there was a rock star involved, and there were two sisters there, and they both went on to be really successful after the murder. One of them wrote an album inspired by it, and one of them wrote a book inspired by it. So you have one of the women from the present timeline doing some digging and trying to figure out what actually went down in the 70s, and then you have the other point of view, and it's dual timelines, so you get both POVs and both storylines going at once. And again, it's set in an Italian villa in the summer, so it's a perfect thriller to read in the summertime. Then we have Listen for the Lie. The main character in this one's best friend gets murdered, and they find her the next morning walking around town covered in blood, and she has no idea what happened. She has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything, and there was never enough evidence to actually figure out what happened. So now it's 5 years later, and she's back in town for her grandmother's birthday, and there's a man doing a true crime podcast there on the murder. So she decides to help him and try and figure out what actually happened because she has no idea. It's set in a small town in Texas, which I really like. And even though it's a thriller and it deals with heavier topics, it's a little bit more lighthearted. She has a very good sense of humor about what happened. So I think this would be perfect for the beach or by the pool. The last thriller is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is actually the first book in a trilogy, but I've only read the first one, so I can only recommend that one. Although I have heard the rest of the books are good too. This follows Pip, and for her senior capstone project, she decides that she wants to solve a murder that happened in her town 5 years before. What happened was this girl went missing, and then the next day her boyfriend went into the woods and committed suicide. So everyone just kind of assumes that that meant he was guilty, but there was never actually enough evidence to prove it, and she doesn't believe it, so she's trying to prove his innocence. This is also YA, so even though it's a thriller, it's definitely easier to read, and it's not as super heavy as some other thrillers I've read. So again, perfect for like the beach, the pool, vacation, something like that. Next I have a sci-fi. This is definitely like has nothing to do with summer. I just think it would be perfect for summer. I also just love this book, so maybe that's why I want to recommend it, but it's Ready Player One. This is a dystopian sci-fi where it's a little bit in the future, and it's after the energy crisis and all that, so the world is not a good place to live. So everyone lives most of their life in virtual reality in this program called the Oasis, and the man who created the Oasis passed away, and he left a scavenger hunt, Easter egg hunt, and whoever wins that gets all of his money and gets to be in charge of the Oasis. So the main character is trying to figure out all those clues so he can win. And the founder was obsessed with the 80s, which is the decade he was a teenager in. So it's very 80s themed, lots of video games, stuff like that, which even if it sounds like you wouldn't be into that, because on paper, this book like should not interest me at all. It's so different from stuff I normally like, and I really don't care about like video games or the 80s that much, but it's so good, and it's the perfect book to escape into, and it just sucks you in. You get so invested. This is also a great book if you're in a reading slump. Okay, now moving on to romance. I definitely have way more romances than I do any other genre in this video, but that is just because I love summer romances so much. Any romance that has to do with summer, vacation, traveling, lake houses, beach houses, I literally can't get enough. And the first few are actually authors who have multiple summery books. So starting off with Sarah Dessen, she writes all YA romances, and she has quite a few that take place in the summer. All her books take place in the same universe, and there's sort of the suburbs where some of her character lives, and then there's also a beach town where a bunch of her character lives. So all of her beach town ones are very summery, and the other ones are too. Like honestly, I would say most of her books take place in the summer from what I remember, but a few of my favorites are The Truth About Forever. This is my favorite book by her. I love this book so much. It's a comfort read for me. It follows Macy, who after her father passes away becomes very much a perfectionist. She has like the perfect boyfriend, the perfect job. She's like focused on getting into college, all that kind of stuff. But because of that, she's never dealt with her grief, and then she gets a summer job catering with this cast of characters and love interest, of course, and she breaks out of her shell, and it's a very sweet coming of age story. The rest of the story is another one I love by her. The main character in this one is supposed to be spending the summer with her best friend because her grandmother's traveling and her dad's going on his honeymoon, but something happens with her friend and she ends up having nowhere to go. So she goes to live with her estranged grandmother on her mother's side. Her mother passed away, and so she doesn't really know that side of the family. She was only there once when she was little, but they live in a house on a lake and they own a motel, and it's across from this big resort country club, yacht club type thing. So it's very summery. Another author that has a lot of summery books is Christina Lauren. Love in Other Words is a second chance romance. Growing up, they had a lake house that they would go to on the weekends, and the romance is between her and her next door neighbor. They ended up dating and then breaking up. Now it's years later and they're reconnecting, but a lot of it takes place in the past during the summers where they fell in love and grew up together. The Paradise Problem is marriage and convenience. They get married for cheaper student housing, and then they have to stay married because it's the only way he can get his inheritance. But she ends up having to go with him to his sister's wedding in, I think, the Philippines or Thailand. I don't remember exactly, but they spend a week on a private island, literally in paradise, the Paradise Problem. And something wilder, this is sort of like a cowboy romance, cowgirl romance situation. Not really. This is also a second chance romance. She's the daughter of this famous treasure hunter. Now she does these really touristy tours through the desert and does like fake treasure hunting kind of stuff. And her ex-boyfriend ends up on one of these tours, but then something happens and clues are getting discovered and they actually end up going on a real treasure hunt. Really fun concept. It's kind of silly and outlandish. It kind of reminds me of Outer Banks. How you know something like that would probably never happen in real life, but you don't really care. That's how I felt about this book, and it's just a lot of fun. Then we have Abby Jimenez, one of my favorite romance authors, specifically her Part of Your World series. Again, do all of these take place during summer? I don't remember. I think they do. At least 2 of them do, I think. This is a series of interconnected standalones, and they all know each other and work at the same hospital because they're all doctors and nurses. The first one, Part of Your World, is rich, big city doctor, falls in love with a small town guy, and Yours Truly is a fake dating with some forced proximity, enemies to lovers type vibe. Also really great anxiety rep in that book. And then the third one, Just for the Summer, is they're both cursed. When they date someone and they break up, that person goes on to find their soulmate in the next relationship, so they decide to date each other to try and break the curse. All really good romances. Abby Jimenez also is really good at having fun romances that also have deeper storylines going on and are more emotional, which I love. Emily Henry, of course, too. All of her books are very summery. Beatree takes place at a lake house in Michigan over the summer. Happy Place is a beach cottage in Maine. Book Lovers is a small town in North Carolina. And Funny Stories, also a small lake town in Michigan. And People Meet on Vacation, of course. That one takes place in a lot of different places because every year they go on a different trip during the summer. And her books just are the best, but also just very summery, all of them. That was the last author, but I do have a few serious recommendations. So the first one is Heartless by Elsie Silver. I have to be honest, I think there's still one of these I haven't read, maybe 2, but I've read most of them. They're all interconnected standalones and they take place on this family's ranch. It follows a bunch of siblings, and something about the ranch cowboy romances just screams summer to me. There's also tons of different tropes and characters and things going on in this series. I feel like most people would probably like at least one of these. It's just a fun series overall. Next up, we have the When in Rome series. These are 2 interconnected standalones that take place in this really cute town in Kentucky. The town very much gives Stars Hollow if it was in the South. It's just the cutest little town. Everyone has their own little business they run, and there's like the wacky side characters. The first one follows a famous pop star who loves Audrey Hepburn, so she wants to have a When in Rome moment, but she can't actually go to Rome, so she goes to Rome, Kentucky, which is their small town, and she ends up staying with this grumpy pie shop owner because there's no vacancies at the motel. And then the second one follows the bodyguard of the pop star from the first one and the sister of the male main character in the first one, and they have a romance. They have the dating coach trope where she's like very innocent and he's a little bit of a player, and so he is giving her advice and giving her dating tips. Both very, very cute, very summery. Then we have a YA romance, The Summer of Broken Rules. The female main character goes to Martha's Vineyard every year because her grandparents have property there. They live on this compound, kind of. It's like this big property with a bunch of houses, and she has a huge family that all goes and stays there. But this is the first year she's going without her sister because her sister has passed away, and she's going for her cousin's wedding. And the romance is between her and one of the groomsmen. And they also have this big game of assassin that the entire family plays. How to Honeymoon Alone. The main character in this one was supposed to get married, but she finds out her fiance has cheated on her. But the honeymoon is her dream trip. She planned all of it. She's been looking forward to it literally her entire life. So she decides to go anyway. And then the first night she's there, she sits alone to have dinner, and this man comes and sits with her her because he doesn't want to have to wait for a table. And it turns out he also was supposed to be there with somebody, but is now there alone, and he has all these activities planned, snorkeling and boat rides and stuff like that. So he invites her to do all of his activities with him so that they don't have to each be alone. It takes place in Barbados, and it is literally the perfect vacation read. Next is All Roads Lead Here. The main character in this one is recently divorced, and so she moves back to her hometown in Colorado, where she actually hasn't lived since she was, I think, 10 or 12, because her mom went on a hike and went missing and was never found. So she moves back to her hometown because she just doesn't know what to do with her life, basically, and she wants to feel closer to her mom. So she's working at an outdoor store and going on tons of hikes, and she rents this garage apartment, and the love interest is her landlord, and he's like a grumpy single dad. I love this book. I read it multiple times, and every single time I read it, I just feel like I need to go on a hike and be in the sunshine. Do I do it? No, but it does give you those vibes. The next one is a sports romance. In Caught Up, the mailman character is a single dad who's in the MLB, and he's having trouble finding a nanny, so his coach puts his daughter up for the job, and she ends up living with them and being his nanny. So it's a nanny trope romance. And then last but not least, we have Same Time Next Summer. This is another one, like, classic summertime trope. I feel like they were neighbors in their beach houses growing up. They knew each other their whole lives. They started dating when they were teenagers, and then they broke up. They both leave town. She moves to the city and is now engaged and is coming back to, I think it's set on Long Island. She's coming back to Long Island to plan her wedding, and he went to California to be a musician, and he's also back. I forget why, but they're both back at the same time, and of course they are reconnecting. Perfect summer vibes. It made me want a beach house on Long Island so bad. If you have any recommendations for me, please comment them down below, because I truly cannot get enough. I love this type of book, and hopefully you got a new book recommendation out of this. If you want to find me anywhere else, I'll have all my other socials down below as always, and thank you so much for watching.